What's up everyone, today we are painting Hyld from Zombicide Green Horde. Now she's a pretty interesting model because she has great colors, a lot of leather. We have a wooden shield which I put a paint job on top of, then ripped back off using some really cool latex medium that allows you to save a paint job underneath and then paint something over. I've really enjoyed this model and I thought she came out awesome. So let's get down to the table and I'll show you how I painted her. Alright, so we started off Hyld with a Zenithal Prime. Hit her with black all over and then did white from the top down and like a 45-degree angle. And now we have a flat flesh being painted onto her face and her hands. That's really the only skin she has showing. Next up, we're using Reikland Fleshshade to shade down all of her skin. So again, just her face and her hands. Then I have German Gray, which I'm painting into her eyelid or eye sockets. I would not do this again. This was something I was trying out to see how I could line eyes and make them look a little bit better. I think the German Gray is way too dark. So I'm using Ivory here for her actual eyeballs. But yeah, German Gray was just way too dark and it made it look like eyeliner instead of it looking like just natural eye shade like I thought it would. I have Reddish flesh here. I mix that in with the skin tone and I'm painting the lips. You want to focus mostly on the bottom lip. If you do it on the top lip as well, it ends up looking like lipstick. And it just looks, the face gets kind of distorted and sort of looks clownish. Using flat flesh here to start highlighting back up her skin. Very simple procedure. If this isn't your very first model, then you pretty much already know all of this part. Nothing really that special. Now mixing in fairy flesh, we're going to do multiple coats of continuing to pick out just the raised portion like the forehead, nose, her right cheekbone, lining the jawline, and then the tops of her hands, and each time getting a little bit smaller in the amount of area that we cover. Now I'm using Khaki here for her hair. I'm going to cover all of her hair. She's got a really dirty blonde look, and to kind of sell it, we're going to start with a mid-tone of between blonde and brunette. So we're taking this khaki color here, then we'll shade it down in the shadows and then brighten up the other sides of it. So here's Agrax Earthshade going on to the hair to shade it down and make sure that the shadows have this real dark brown color, and then all the highlights will be blonde, and that will sell it. And I think that her hair actually came out really, really well. Using yellow ochre as my first highlighting color. This is sort of a yellow brown. It's definitely taking the khaki and bringing it into the yellow spectrum and out of the light brown spectrum. Just make sure that your Agrax Earthshade has completely dried. If you want to move on to one of the other steps and then come back to this one, that's totally fine as well. But make sure that Agrax has dried completely before you start this, or else the Agrax is going to mix with the paint and then you're going to have a mess and you're going to kind of have to start over in this area. I'm using some Umbral umber and that is to start base coating the wood of the shield. Now her shield in the game art is pretty much like a turquoise green color, but I actually had an idea that I think looks really, really cool. And to do that, we're going to actually have to build the wood underneath that color. And the way I'm doing that is I use the Umbral lumber, and then I'm coming back with Khaki. I'm going to do multiple coats of Khaki, and then also I will add some white into the Khaki and do some highlights of that as well, which I don't believe I got on video. I actually started this model about 6 months before I'm recording this voiceover here, and that is by far the longest I spent painting any single model. And it's not because this one's hard, it's just that I started doing a bunch of other stuff and she got kind of pushed off to the side, and yeah, it's little weird to like be looking at some of this stuff that I did 6 months ago. So that was from Green Stuff World. It is some latex that you put on to make sure that you protect paint underneath that latex without destroying that paint. So now that I have a fully painted shield, I'm putting this flat blue over the top, and then I'm using white to paint in a little like half moon design that I thought looked pretty cool, and I'm painting this as if that latex wasn't even there. So you can paint any design in there, but I thought that this was a pretty simple one, and I mean, like, I'm working on my freehand, I'm not very good at it yet, so I just wanted to do something really simple and kind of just try this out and see how it works. Now I'm taking a bunch of white tack, which is like poster putty, and this stuff will not pull off any paint, but what I'm trying to do is get it to stick to the latex, and it sort of did. It got the latex to begin to remove, and then I kind of used my nail to go in there and really grab it. But here you go. So now that it's ripped that off, you can see the wood underneath the latex. And it isn't a very elegant process, but if you're careful, you can do this without damaging any of the paint that you actually want to stay there. So as you can see now, I've got that design there, and I've got that underneath as if she was in battle, and some of the paint has come off. So everything that's going to be painted in a steel color or in any sort of metallic, we want to base coat it in black. That's what I'm doing now, is the shield is getting a black base coat on it. I'm going to start in on her clothes, and I'm using orange leather from scale 75, ScaleColor. And this is for all of her pants, so I have to do everything. Next up, we're using Iroko, and that is being mixed in slowly. I'm going to do a couple different layers of this to ensure that the leather looks a very natural transition from the darks to the lights, but pretty standard highlighting. And then I mix some khaki in, and then the khaki is going to be one of the highlight colors. Then we're going to be picking the top half of her leg there, and then her calf on the other leg are going to be like the bright points. Now we're using khaki to paint in a couple of the raised lines that come from the folds in her clothes. And now this is pure khaki, and this one we're actually painting, there's two, she has like a wrap of some sort around her upper leg on both sides. And so I painted that in khaki. And then we're going to use Ivory to highlight that up so that it looks like a dirty cotton sort of color. Like an unbleached and dirty cotton. Next, I'm using black on all of the wraps that are around her shoes at the bottom. And then I'm also using German gray, and don't forget to actually hit the shoes. I think I was still debating on what color I wanted the shoes to be, but I eventually just made them the black and German gray, I believe. Like I said, it's been a while, so it might not be, but if I were painting it right now, I'd be painting the shoes black with German gray highlights. I'm using some light turquoise for her skirt that's going around underneath her like leather chest piece. Now the light turquoise is definitely the mid to upper tone, so we're going to want to shade that down. And I'm using Drakenhof Nightshade from GW. This is the blue wash. And I'm just painting this in all of the shadows. And if you keep it nice and thin, then it gives you time to work with it and make sure that you don't put too much on. And I put some ivory into the light turquoise to lighten it and start doing the highlights for the skirt. This model has quite a bit of little teeny tiny details. So while she's not really hard, she definitely is time consuming, because if you want her to look like the artwork, she's a lot of different colors. Here I'm using German gray to base coat this gray kind of like, I don't know if it's like a smock or something that's in the middle of the skirt that's hanging down. I'm using Mechanicus standard gray to then highlight that. Highlight the German gray, leaving the German gray only in the deep shadows, because I didn't want to wash this now that we've already started finishing areas around it. Wash can sometimes get a little unruly, and the more I have already painted, the less I want to start washing things. Next, I'm using some wolf gray to highlight of that area, and this smock thing, I don't really know what it is. It's like some sort of cloth that's hanging down, is actually like really dark in the shadows and really light, almost as if it was metallic, but it's also clearly not metallic. It's clearly cloth, and she has that same cloth on her shoulder. And so I'm going to then add some ivory and go up pretty much to pure ivory in this whole area, trying to get as much of that to look like, I don't know really what it is, maybe like a wool, but it's sort of reflective and shiny, but it's also a cloth. So it's fine if you're not really sure how to do that. I'm really not 100% sure if it turned out exactly the way I wanted it to, but by stippling, which is to make little tiny brush strokes over and over and over again with the brightest color, I think that looked the best. I'm using khaki here to color in her arm plates that are on her. They go from her elbow down to her wrist. You can't really see the one on the left hand because that's covered by the shield, so you just see the one on the right hand. Mix some ivory into that khaki, brighten it up. Here's some flat brown. I wanted to make sure that the leather of her middle section was different than the leather of her pants. And since the leather of the pants we went so bright, this one we're going to do that dark orange leather. So I'm using flat brown to base the entire leather piece. Being very careful not to hit the things that I've already painted. And then I'm making sure I use Mechanicus standard gray right now on the sword. And any of the little metal pieces that are sort of around her but aren't main areas. I didn't want to do any sort of non-metallic metal on her sword. I kind of wanted to keep it simple. So I did an Agrax Earthshade wash, and I didn't show it. I did a Nuln Oil wash on the blade, and then I did a couple extra Nuln Oil washes on the blade around the base of the handle to sort of give it a gradient without really spending too much time on it. At this point, this is where I picked back up on the model, and I kind of just wanted to get her finished, so I wasn't going to spend a ton of time doing like non-metallic metal on a model that's been sitting on my desk taking up space for 6 months. Now she's definitely a very, very good sculpt, and I don't know why I kept putting her off, but I think it was because I needed to switch so many colors, and each section would be 6 different colors. Here I am just highlighting up all of the leather. Do a couple of coats of that, highlight it more and more, and on her right rib cage, that's where you want to focus those highlights. That's where it's going to shine the most. And I'm using buff to go and paint in all of the little X stitches that she has. There's like cross stitches across her whole chest there. And I think buff makes a really, really good contrast to the dark, mid, and orangish tones of the brown leather. Now of black, I'm painting, she has a couple of like belts that are going around that are black leather. So I'm just going to highlight those with some German gray, and then a little bit of Mechanicus in just a couple of spots to sort of highlight those. And then here's some waaagh flesh from GW, and that is for the 2 orc heads that she has hanging from the back here. I'm using steel to go and paint all of the metal that is around the shield. And with that base coat of black on there, it'll come out really nice and shiny and look really, really good. Now I'm washing some Biel-Tan green. Sorry that it's so blurry, but I'm washing some Biel-Tan green over the orc faces. And then I'm going to come back with some flat green and highlight up the orc faces. It's pretty much the last step of what we're doing here. And you can see I'm already starting to build the base. And I'm going to put her on a snow base, and I will definitely make a video in the future of how I make snow. Real quickly, it's baking soda, white paint, and some Elmer's glue. Mix that together, make sure that it's not too runny. And then you just slap it on the model, and if you put it in an airtight jar, it will last you pretty much like a year. Ivory is being mixed into the green to help highlight, and also some pure ivory in around the teeth. That's about it there. But yeah, let me know what you think. I think that she came out really, really good, even though I could feel my frustration as time was going on with her, that I just wanted to get her done and move on to another model and put her back in the box. By far not the worst model, but one that I was sort of losing all that interest for. Let me know in the comments down below what model you would like to see painted next, and definitely give me a thumbs up if you liked the video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. New outro, I know. If you want to watch more in this series, click right here. If you would like to watch another video in a completely different series, click right here. And if you'd like an easy way to subscribe, other than clicking down below, even though it's right there and it says subscribe, you can click on this little picture right here. That also works.